The smell of recycled air and cheap alcohol filled every corner of the rusty comet. Danny Reeves sat alone at the far end of the bar, nursing a glass of whiskey that had cost him half a day's wages. His shoulders ached from 12 hours of loading cargo containers, and his mind kept drifting back to Earth. 3 years hauling freight across the frontier, and he still wasn't used to the loneliness. Lyra, the four-armed bartender, wiped down the counter with 2 hands while pouring drinks with the other 2. Her blue skin glistened under the dim lights, and her large eyes watched the door nervously. Danny noticed but didn't ask. In a place like Crossroads Haven, minding your own business kept you alive. The door slammed open with a bang that made every glass on the bar rattle. Conversations died mid-sentence. Danny glanced up from his drink and saw why. A creature that looked like it had been designed by nightmares filled the doorway. 8 feet tall, covered in gray armor-like skin with claws that could tear through steel. Its eyes glowed yellow in the dim light, scanning the room like a predator counting prey. 3 more of the same species followed behind, but the first one commanded attention. He wore trophies on a belt across his chest, each one a token from a kill. Danny had heard stories about the Vraks, everyone had. They were the galaxy's ultimate hunters, mercenaries who never lost a fight. "I am Wraith the Unbroken," the creature announced in a voice that sounded like grinding rocks. "We have completed our hunt. The custom demands tribute." He slammed a clawed hand on the nearest table, and the metal buckled under the impact. Around the bar, beings from a dozen different species scrambled to offer their drinks. An insectoid creature practically threw its entire bottle at Wraith's feet. A floating gas-based life form pulsed anxiously and pushed its container forward. Even the tough-looking reptilian in the corner, who Danny had seen break up 3 fights that week, quietly slid his drink across the bar toward the Vraks. Danny watched this happen with tired eyes. He'd spent the day moving other people's cargo, listening to other people's orders, swallowing his pride for a paycheck. Now some oversized lizard wanted his drink too, the last drink he'd bought himself in 2 weeks. He turned back to his glass and took another sip. Heavy footsteps approached. The temperature seemed to drop. A shadow fell over Danny, blocking out the already dim light. He could smell something like copper and smoke, the scent of violence. Human. The word came out like a threat. "Give tribute." Danny looked at his glass, then at the towering figure beside him. Up close, Wraith was even more terrifying. Scars crisscrossed his armored hide. His claws were stained dark with old blood. Those yellow eyes held no mercy, no doubt. This was a being who had killed hundreds and never questioned it. "No thanks," Danny said quietly. "I'm good." The bar somehow became even more silent. Somewhere in the back, someone dropped a glass, and the sound echoed like thunder. Wraith's eyes widened slightly. In his 3 decades of taking tribute, no one had ever refused. Lesser species knew their place. They gave what the strong demanded, or they died. It was the way of things. "You do not understand," Wraith said, almost amused. "I am Wraith. I have killed the Dreadmaw of Kelos 9. I have hunted the void whales of the Scattered Belt. I have taken tribute from 1,000 worlds." He leaned down, bringing his face close to Danny's. "You will give me your drink, or I will take it from your corpse." Lyra rushed over, her forearms waving frantically. "Please, honored Wraith, let me offer you our finest spirits on the house." "There is no need for silence." Wraith didn't even look at her. His eyes stayed locked on Danny. Danny set his glass down carefully. He'd been in situations like this before, back on Earth. Different setting, different bully, same story. Growing up in the construction yards of Detroit had taught him that some people only understood one language. He'd tried to leave that part of himself behind when he came to space. Tried to be better, but apparently the galaxy had the same problems as home. "That's a 12-credit whiskey," Danny said in that same quiet voice. "You're going to need to pay for that." For a moment, Wraith just stared. Then he laughed. It was a horrible sound, like metal scraping against stone. His crew joined in, their laughter filling the bar. Other patrons looked away, embarrassed for the human who would soon be dead. "You are either very brave or very stupid, human," Wraith said when he stopped laughing. "But you have amused me. For that I will make your death quick." He swung his arm in a casual backhand, claws extended. It was the same motion he'd used to kill countless beings, so fast that most didn't even see it coming. The force behind it could crack bone and tear flesh. He expected the human to crumple, maybe lose his head. Instead, the human wasn't there anymore. Danny had ducked under the swing, his construction worker reflexes saving his life by inches. Wraith's claws tore through the metal wall behind where Danny's head had been, leaving 5 deep gouges in the steel. The Virax pulled his hand free and turned, genuine surprise on his face. Danny stood a few feet away, hands up in a basic fighting stance. His heart hammered in his chest, adrenaline flooding his system. Every survival instinct his ancestors had spent millions of years developing was screaming at him to run. But he didn't run. "Last chance," Danny said. "Pay for the drink and we're done here." Wraith's amusement vanished. His lips pulled back, revealing rows of serrated teeth. "You dare challenge me? You die slowly now, human. I will make you an example." Around them, the bar had cleared a wide circle. Beings pressed against the walls or ducked behind overturned tables. Several had their recording devices out, capturing what they thought would be an execution. Lyra stood frozen behind the bar, her face pale with fear. Wraith charged forward with terrifying speed, claws outstretched, roaring a battle cry that had made armies flee. Danny's eyes tracked the movement, calculating angles and momentum the way he'd learned to calculate load weights and stress points. The Vrax was fast and strong, but he was also 8 feet of mass moving in a straight line. Danny stepped to the side at the last possible second. Wraith crashed into a table, shattering it into pieces. Before the Vrax could recover, Danny grabbed a metal chair and held it between them like a shield. "We don't have to do this," Danny said, breathing hard. But he knew that wasn't true. They both knew it now. Wraith rose from the debris, his eyes blazing with rage. For the first time in his life, prey had not only escaped his attack but made him look foolish. In front of witnesses. In front of his crew. This human would die, slowly and painfully, and his death would restore Wraith's honor. The galaxy's apex predator prepared to show this weak species why Vrax were feared across 1,000 worlds. But Danny Reeves, cargo hauler from Earth, stood his ground. He'd spent 3 years running from his past, from the violence he knew he was capable of. Tonight, apparently, his past had caught up with him. The real fight was about to begin. Wraith circled Danny like a hunter stalking wounded prey. His claws scraped against the metal floor, leaving scratches in their wake. The Vrax had fought in war zones, gladiatorial arenas, and deathworld jungles. He'd faced beings twice his size and creatures made of pure energy. None of them had survived. This human wouldn't either. Danny kept the chair between them, his grip tight enough to make his knuckles white. His mind raced through options. The door was 15 feet away, blocked by Wraith's crew. The windows were reinforced plasteel. The only way out was through, and through meant fighting the most dangerous warrior in 3 sectors. The Vrax lunged forward with deceptive speed. Danny swung the chair, connecting with Wraith's shoulder. The impact sent vibrations up Danny's arms like hitting solid concrete. The chair bent but didn't break. Wraith didn't even flinch. He grabbed the chair with one massive hand and yanked it away, tossing it across the room where it embedded itself in the far wall. Now Danny had nothing between them. Wraith smiled, showing all those terrible teeth. He swung a backhand that would have taken Danny's head clean off. Danny dropped low, feeling the wind from the blow pass over him. While crouched, he kicked out hard at Wraith's knee, aiming for the joint. The kick connected, and Danny immediately regretted it. It felt like kicking a tree trunk. Pain shot through his foot and up his leg, but something unexpected happened. Wraith stumbled. Just slightly, just for a second, but he stumbled. The Vrax's eyes widened in surprise. In 30 years of combat, his legs had never failed him. Behind the bar, Lyra was frantically explaining to a Quillith trader who'd stayed to watch. "Humans come from Earth. Gravity 0.98. Almost same as Vrax homeworld. Most species here." She gestured around the bar. "They come from low-gravity worlds. 6/10, 7/10 at most. Human kicks with full gravity world strength." The Quillith's antenna twitched with understanding. "But Vrax are famous for their strength." "Surely, Vrax are ambush hunters," Lyra interrupted. "Built for quick kills, humans?" She watched Danny dodge another strike. "Humans are pursuit predators. Built to outlast anything." Wraith charged again, this time leading with his shoulder like a battering ram. Danny couldn't dodge fast enough. The impact hit him square in the chest and sent him flying backward. He crashed into a table, felt something crack in his ribs, and rolled onto the floor, gasping for air. The Vrax was on him in seconds, one clawed foot pressing down on Danny's chest. The weight was crushing. Danny couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Wraith leaned down, his breath hot and rancid. "Did you truly believe you could defeat me, human? I have ended greater warriors than you. I have drunk the blood of champions. You are nothing but—" Danny's hand had been searching the floor desperately. His fingers closed around a piece of broken glass from an earlier dropped drink. Without thinking, operating on pure survival instinct, he swung it up and slashed across Wraith's face. The Vrax roared and stumbled back, green blood flowing from a cut across his cheek. In 3 decades, only 5 beings had ever made him bleed. None of them had been as small as this human. Wraith touched his face, looked at the blood on his fingers, and something changed in his eyes. The amusement was gone. The confidence was gone. What remained was pure, cold rage. Danny used those precious seconds to climb to his feet. His chest screamed in protest where Wraith had stepped on him. At least one rib was cracked, maybe broken. He could taste blood in his mouth. But he was alive. And that was more than anyone had expected. "You want to know something about humans?" Danny said between painful breaths. He grabbed a bottle from a nearby table. "We don't give up, ever." He threw the bottle at Wraith's head. The Vrax blocked it easily, glass shattering against his arm. But Danny had already moved, grabbing another bottle, then another. He threw them rapid fire, not trying to hurt Wraith, but to keep him defensive, keep him backing up. Each throw was precise, aimed at the eyes, the throat, anywhere vulnerable. Wraith snarled and covered his face with his arms, the bottles exploding harmlessly against his armored hide. When the barrage stopped, he looked up to find Danny had used those seconds to gain distance and position himself near better weapons. The human now held a metal serving tray. "This is pathetic," Wraith growled. "You delay the inevitable with toys and tricks. Face me with honor." "Honor?" Danny almost laughed, but it hurt too much. "You wanted to take my drink because you could? Because you're bigger? That's not honor. That's just being a bully." Something about those words hit Wraith harder than any physical blow. In his culture, strength was honor. The strong took from the weak because that was the natural order. But seeing himself through the human's eyes, even for a moment, planted a seed of doubt. He shook it off. Doubt was weakness, and weakness was death. Wraith charged again, but this time Danny was ready. Instead of dodging away, he moved forward into the charge, dropping under Wraith's reaching arms. He slammed the metal tray upward into the Vrax's chin with everything he had. The clang echoed through the bar. Wraith's head snapped back. For the first time in the fight, he looked truly hurt. Danny didn't stop. He followed up with a kick to the same knee he'd hit before, then another. The joint was the weak point. Keep hitting the weak point. Wraith swept his arm out wildly, catching Danny across the shoulder and sending him spinning. But the Vrax was limping now. His perfect warrior's stance had developed a flaw. That knee was hurting him, limiting his movement. Around them, the watching crowd had grown. Word had spread through the station's communication networks. Beings were crowding in the doorway, pressing against the windows. Some were recording. Others just stared in disbelief. A human was fighting Wraith the Unbroken and hadn't died in the first 10 seconds. That alone was newsworthy. Danny's construction work had given him strength, but more importantly, it had given him endurance. 12-hour shifts, day after day, had conditioned his body to keep going when everything hurt. Wraith was stronger, faster, more dangerous. But Danny had been in pain before. Pain was just information. It told you that you were still alive. Wraith tried a different approach. He grabbed a table and threw it at Danny. The human dove aside, the table crashing into the wall behind him. Then Wraith threw another and another, turning furniture into projectiles. Danny weaved between them, his focus absolute. One mistake, one hit, and he was done. A chair clipped Danny's shoulder. He felt something pop, pain radiating down his arm. His left arm was compromised now. Wraith saw the injury and smiled. He moved in, sensing victory. The human was weakening. Time to finish this. But when Wraith lunged, Danny did something unexpected. He didn't dodge. He stepped into the attack, getting inside Wraith's reach where those long arms and claws couldn't maneuver effectively. At this range, Danny's shorter stature was an advantage. He hammered his elbow into Wraith's ribs, felt the impact jar his entire arm, and did it again, and again. Wraith tried to grab him, but Danny was too close, moving too fast. The human fought like something cornered and desperate, striking anywhere he could reach. Throat, solar plexus. Floating ribs. Danny's grandfather had boxed in the army. His father had taught him to fight in the construction yard wars. Violence was a human inheritance passed down through generations. Finally, Wraith managed to get his hands on Danny and lifted him off the ground. The Vrax's grip was like a vice, crushing Danny's already injured ribs. Danny's vision started to blur from pain and lack of air. This was it. This was how he died. crushed by an alien in a bar light years from home, all because he wouldn't give up a drink. But humans didn't give up. Danny remembered that. Even as consciousness started to fade, he remembered. He pulled his head back and then snapped it forward with all the strength he had left. His forehead connected with Wraith's nose in a perfect headbutt. The Varax's grip loosened in shock and pain. Danny fell to the floor, gasping for air. Wraith staggered backward, green blood streaming from his nose. No one headbutted a Varax, their skulls were armored. But human skulls had evolved to take impacts, to protect the brain during persistence hunting across rocky terrain. Both fighters stood apart now, bloodied and breathing hard. Danny's left arm hung useless at his side. His ribs were definitely broken. Blood ran from his split lip and a cut above his eye. But he was standing. Wraith looked worse. The cut on his face was still bleeding. His nose was clearly broken. That knee was barely supporting his weight. And for the first time in his life, Wraith the Unbroken looked uncertain. The galaxy's apex predator had met something he didn't understand. Something that wouldn't die, wouldn't submit, wouldn't accept its place in the natural order. He'd met a human. Blood dripped onto the metal floor from both fighters. Green and red mixed together, forming small pools that reflected the bar's dim lighting. Danny wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and tasted copper. Everything hurt. His left arm was useless, hanging limp at his side. Each breath felt like knives in his chest. But pain was just information, and the information told him he was still alive. Wraith breathed heavily through his broken nose, the sound wet and ragged. His injured knee throbbed with each heartbeat. In his entire warrior life, he'd never been in a fight that lasted this long. Vrax battles were quick and brutal. Challenge, strike, victory. 5 minutes at most. This human had been fighting him for nearly 15 minutes now, and showed no signs of surrender. Fear was an unfamiliar sensation for Wraith. As a young Vrax, he'd felt it during his first hunt. Then he'd made his first kill, and the fear had transformed into confidence. That confidence had carried him through 3 decades and 300 victories. But now, looking at the bleeding human who refused to stay down, that old fear returned. Not fear of death, but fear of the unknown. What was this creature? Danny could see the calculation in Wraith's eyes. The Vrax was thinking now, really thinking, instead of just relying on overwhelming force. That made him more dangerous, but also more predictable. Scared people, scared beings, they made mistakes. "We can stop," Danny said, his voice rough. "You walk away." I walk away. Nobody else has to get hurt. Wraith's crew shifted nervously near the door. They'd never seen their leader injured before. Never seen him struggle. One of them, a younger Vrax with fewer scars, took a step forward. Wraith's head snapped toward him and the younger warrior froze. "This is my fight," Wraith growled. Then to Danny, "There is no walking away. One of us leaves standing. The other leaves dead. This is the Vrax way." "Pretty stupid way," Danny muttered. But he understood. Some people needed to prove something, even if it killed them. He'd been one of those people once back on Earth. That's why he'd left. Wraith charged again, but something was different. He was favoring that injured knee, his movements less fluid. Danny saw the opening and took it. He dodged left, and as Wraith turned to follow, Danny kicked the damaged knee again. Hard. The Vrax went down on one leg with a roar of pain. Before he could recover, Danny was on him, striking at the head with his good arm. Right hook to the temple. Elbow to the jaw. These weren't practiced moves from some martial art. This was street fighting, pure and simple. Fighting to survive. Wraith caught Danny's arm and twisted. Danny felt bones grind together and bit back a scream. The Vrax pulled him close, trying to use his superior strength. But Danny had fought bigger guys before. Size wasn't everything. Leverage was everything. Danny dropped his weight suddenly, using gravity and momentum. Wraith, already off balance on his injured knee, toppled forward. They both crashed to the ground in a tangle of limbs. Now it was wrestling, grappling, the kind of close-quarters fighting where technique mattered more than size. In the crowd, a reptilian security officer was explaining to newcomers what they were witnessing. Humans evolved as pack hunters on a death world. They developed complex grappling to take down prey larger than themselves. Watch how he uses his whole body as a weapon. Danny had gotten his legs around Wraith's arm in what his old gym instructor would have called an arm bar. He pulled back with his good arm, hyperextending the Vrax's elbow joint. Wraith screamed. It was a sound his crew had never heard their leader make. The sound of agony. Something snapped in Wraith's mind. Not his arm, though that was close to breaking. Something deeper. The foundation of his entire worldview. He was Wraith the Unbroken. He was the apex predator. He was undefeated. But this human was defeating him, slowly and methodically in front of dozens of witnesses. With a desperate surge of strength fueled by panic, Wraith yanked his arm free. He rolled away, putting distance between them. His arm hung at an odd angle, not broken but badly damaged. His knee could barely support weight. Blood obscured the vision in one eye. Danny climbed to his feet slower this time. His body was running on fumes now. Adrenaline and stubbornness the only things keeping him upright. He'd been in construction fights that ended with broken bones and hospital visits, but those lasted minutes. This had been going on for almost 20 minutes, and his body was shutting down. "Stay down," Danny pleaded. "Please, just stay down." But Wraith couldn't. His pride wouldn't let him. His culture wouldn't let him. If he surrendered now, he would be exiled from his clan, stripped of his titles, marked as broken. Death was preferable to dishonor. He forced himself up on his good leg, wavering but standing. The crowd watched in awful silence, knowing they were witnessing something historic. The recordings being broadcast across the station would change everything. No longer would the Vrax be seen as invincible. This human, this cargo worker, was destroying that myth with his bare hands. Danny saw the determination in Wraith's eyes and felt something twist in his chest. Not fear, respect. Whatever else the Vrax was, he had courage. Stupid, stubborn courage, but courage nonetheless. In another life, they might have been friends. In this life, one of them was going to die in a filthy bar over a 12-credit drink. Wraith limped forward, each step clearly painful. He threw a punch that Danny easily dodged. The Vrax was too injured now, too slow. Danny could finish this. Should finish this. One good hit to the temple and it would be over. Self-defense. Everyone had seen Wraith attack first. No one would blame him. Danny's fist came up, aimed at that vulnerable spot on Wraith's skull. The punch had all his weight behind it, all his pain and anger and frustration. 3 years of being alone in space. 3 years of loading cargo for people who barely saw him as human. 3 years of running from violence only to have violence find him anyway. The punch stopped an inch from Wraith's head. Danny's hand trembled in the air, every muscle in his body screaming at him to complete the strike. But he remembered the man he'd nearly killed back in Detroit. The way the guy had looked at him afterward, not with anger, but with pity. The way Danny had seen his father in the mirror that night, and his grandfather and every Reeves man going back generations. Violence solving problems with more violence, passing trauma down like a family heirloom. He'd come to space to break that cycle. "No," Danny said quietly. "We're done." He lowered his fist and stepped back. The crowd gasped. Wraith stood there, swaying, unable to process what had just happened. In Vrax culture, fights ended in death or submission. The human had chosen neither, had simply stopped fighting. What is this?" Wraith's voice was barely a whisper. "You mock me? I'm letting you live," Danny said. He turned and started walking toward the bar. Every step was agony. His legs felt like lead, but he kept walking, turning his back on the galaxy's most dangerous predator. "Your drink money. It's on the bar." He tossed a credit chip and it clattered on the metal counter. Lyra stared at him like he'd grown a second head. The entire bar stared. Danny didn't care. He just wanted to sit down before he fell down. Wraith looked at the credit chip, then at the human's back, then at his own clawed hands. These hands had killed hundreds. These hands could strike down the human in seconds. But something stopped him. Not fear, not injury. Something else. Something he didn't have words for. The human had won, had the power to kill, had chosen mercy instead. In Wraith's world, mercy was weakness. But he'd just spent 20 minutes learning that this human was not weak. So if the human wasn't weak, what did that make mercy? His injured leg finally gave out. Wraith collapsed to one knee, and this time he couldn't get back up. His crew rushed forward, finally able to help. They supported him, speaking in rapid Vrax about getting medical attention. Wraith barely heard them. His eyes stayed locked on Danny's back. Danny made it to the bar and collapsed onto a stool. The room spun. Lyra put a glass of water in front of him, and he drank it greedily. The cold liquid hurt going down his throat, but it was the best thing he'd ever tasted. "Why?" Lyra whispered. "You could have killed him." "Yeah," Danny agreed. "I could have." He looked at his bloody knuckles. "But then what? His crew kills me. Or more Varaks come for revenge. Or I become the guy who killed Wraith the Unbroken. And every warrior in the galaxy wants to test themselves against me. Where does it end? I don't think it does, Lyra said softly. I think you just changed everything. Through the crowd, 3 more Varaks pushed their way into the bar. They were larger than Wraith, covered in more scars, wearing the markings of clan leaders. The crowd parted before them like water. Danny closed his eyes. Of course there were more. There were always more. The lead Varaks approached Wraith, and they spoke in their harsh language. Danny couldn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. It sounded like questions. Not anger. Questions. The lead Vrax's eyes kept flicking to Danny, studying him. Finally, the lead Vrax approached the bar. Up close, he was terrifying, making Wraith look small by comparison. Old scars covered every visible inch of skin. This was a warrior who'd seen true war, not just bar fights and bounties. You are the human, the Vrax said in perfect galactic common. I'm a human, Danny corrected tiredly. Danny Reeves, cargo hauler. Really not looking for more trouble. You spare Wraith, why? Danny thought about how to answer that. How to explain Earth philosophy to an alien warrior culture. How to make him understand that sometimes the strongest thing you could do was walk away. Because he was beat, Danny said finally. Didn't need to kill him to prove it. The old Vrax stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. It was slight, almost imperceptible, but it was there, a gesture of respect. 3 days had passed since the fight. Danny sat in his small quarters aboard Captain Hollis's freight ship, staring at the ceiling. His ribs were wrapped tight in medical gel tape, the kind that accelerated healing but still hurt like hell. His left arm was in a support brace. The bruises covering his body had shifted from purple to a sickly yellow-green. The door chimed. Danny ignored it. It chimed again. I know you're in there, Danny, Captain Hollis called through the door. We need to talk. Go away, Danny said. Can't do that. You're famous now. We need to deal with it. Danny sighed and triggered the door open. Captain Hollis stepped in, a data pad tucked under his arm. He was a short man in his 50s, with gray hair and worry lines that had deepened over the past 3 days. He'd been running freight in frontier space for 20 years and thought he'd seen everything. Then his cargo hauler had defeated the galaxy's most famous warrior in a bar fight. You look terrible, Hollis said, sitting in the room's only chair. Feel worse? Danny replied. What do you want? Hollis activated the datapad. Interview requests from 47 news networks. Fight challenges from a dozen warrior species. Job offers from 17 military contractors. 3 marriage proposals, though I think those might be jokes. 1 invitation to write your autobiography. And something weird from the Vrax clan council requesting a formal meeting. Danny closed his eyes. No to which one? All of them. I'm a cargo hauler. I load boxes. That's it. That's not it anymore, Hollis said gently. Like it or not, you're a symbol now. The human who beat a Vrax. Every video of that fight has been watched billions of times across the galactic network. You're the most famous human in space right now. I don't want to be famous. I want to load cargo and be left alone. Well, you should have thought of that before you picked a fight with... I didn't pick the fight. Danny sat up too fast, winced as his ribs protested. He wanted my drink. I said no, that's it. That's all I did. I just said no. Hollis was quiet for a moment. Yeah, I know. But the galaxy doesn't see it that way. They see a human taking down the apex predator. They see their assumptions about Earth being challenged. You can't put that back in the box. Danny lay back down. What does the Vrax Council want? Don't know. The message just requests your presence at neutral ground. Today, if possible. They assured me it's not a revenge thing. Actually used the words no hostility intended, which apparently is a big deal for Vrax. Could be a trap. Could be, Hollis agreed. Could also be important. Your choice, but I think you should go. I'll come with you. Safety in numbers and all that. Danny stared at the ceiling some more. Part of him wanted to refuse to hide in this room until the galaxy forgot about him, but that wasn't going to happen. The recording existed. His name was out there. The only way forward was through. Fine, he said. When? 2 hours. Gives you time to look slightly less like someone used you as a punching bag. The meeting was set at one of Crossroads Haven's public gardens, a rare luxury on a space station. Real plants grown in imported soil under artificial sunlight. The air actually smelled fresh here, not like recycled oxygen and machinery. Wraith was already waiting when Danny and Hollis arrived. The Vrax warrior looked different. His arm was in a complex brace that covered most of his upper limb. He moved carefully, favoring that damaged knee. The cut on his face was healing, but would leave a prominent scar. But the biggest change was in his eyes. The absolute certainty was gone, replaced with something more complicated. Wraith stood as they approached. Danny tensed, ready for anything. But the Vrax just watched him, that complicated look intensifying. "You came," Wraith said finally. "Yeah. What do you want?" "To understand." Wraith gestured to a nearby bench. "Please sit, talk." Danny exchanged a glance with Hollis, who shrugged. They sat, maintaining distance. Wraith lowered himself carefully onto another bench, his injured leg extended. "For 30 cycles I have been warrior," Wraith began. "I have studied combat, learned to read opponents, predict their moves. I have fought 100 species. All follow patterns. Predators attack. Prey flee, simple. But I didn't fit your pattern," Danny said. "No, you fight like predator, but you think like—" Wraith struggled for the word, like something else. "You had power to kill. I was defeated, vulnerable. In all species I know strong kill weak. Is natural order. But you stopped, because you were beaten. There was no point. There is always point." Wraith's voice rose, then he controlled himself. "Strong must prove strength. Weak must know their place. This is how universe works. This is how my people survive for 1,000 cycles. But you—" He pointed at Danny. "You break this. You show mercy. And I do not understand." Danny thought about how to explain it. How to make an alien warrior understand human philosophy, especially when Danny himself wasn't sure he understood it. "On Earth," he said slowly, "we've got this idea that the strongest person in the room isn't the one who can do the most damage. It's the one who can choose not to. Anyone can throw a punch. Takes real strength to walk away." "This makes no sense," Wraith said. "Walking away is weakness, is it? You attacked me. I defended myself. I won. What would killing you have proved? That I'm strong? I already proved that by beating you. Killing you would have just meant more violence. Your crew comes after me. Then maybe more Virax, then maybe humans and Virax go to war. Where does it end? It ends when strong survive and weak do not. And then what? The strong fight each other until there's only one left? Then that one dies alone with nobody around because they killed everyone? That's not survival. That's just slow suicide." Wraith sat in silence, processing this. Around them, the garden hummed with artificial life. A maintenance drone buzzed past, tending to the plants. Normal life continuing despite the weight of their conversation. "You injured me in front of my crew," Wraith said quietly. "I should be exile. Should be declared broken. But clan leaders, they watch the recordings. They see something different. They see human warrior who fights with honor and wisdom. They send me to ask questions. To learn. Learn what? How your species survives. You are not strongest. Not fastest. I research Earth after fight. Your world is deathworld, yes, but you are not apex predator on your own world. Many creatures are stronger, yet you dominate planet. How?" Danny had never really thought about it that way. "We work together. Humans are pack animals. We cooperate. 1 human versus 1 lion, the lion wins. 10 humans versus 1 lion, we win. We figure out problems as a group. Vrax work alone," Wraith said. "Warriors prove worth individually. Strong rise. Weak fall. And how's that working out for you?" The question hit harder than any punch had. Wraith's expression shifted, something like pain crossing his features. "We are dying. Birth rates fall each cycle. We fight too much with each other. Young warriors killed before they have offspring. We are strong, but strength does not save species." "But cooperation might," Danny said. "Yes, this is why clan leaders send me to you. To understand this human idea, this mercy and cooperation." Wraith leaned forward. "Will you teach me?" Danny blinked. "Teach you what?" "How to be strong without killing. How to show mercy without weakness. How to think like human. I'm not a teacher. I load cargo. You defeated me. You earned right to teach." Captain Hollis spoke up for the first time. "Danny, this could be important. Relations between humans and Virax have always been tense. If you could help bridge that gap—" "I just wanted a drink," Danny said tiredly. "I didn't ask for any of this." "I did not ask to be defeated," Wraith replied. "Did not ask to have my beliefs broken. But here we are. Both of us must adapt or die." Danny looked at the Vrax warrior, really looked at him. saw past the armor plating and the scars to something more. Fear. Hope. The same thing Danny had been running from for 3 years. The chance to be better than what you were raised to be. I don't know if I can teach you anything, Danny said. I'm still figuring this stuff out myself. Then we figure out together as... What is word? Partners? Partners, Danny repeated. The word felt strange. He'd been alone for so long, keeping everyone at arm's length. But maybe that was part of the problem. Maybe you couldn't learn to be better alone. Maybe it took someone else to hold up a mirror. All right, Danny said. We can try. But first rule, no more demanding tribute drinks. For the first time since they'd met, Wraith made a sound that might have been a laugh. Agreed, his expensive habit anyway. Over the next few weeks, an unlikely friendship formed. Wraith visited the freight ship daily, and Danny tried to explain human concepts that seemed obvious to him, but were alien to the Vracs. Cooperation, compromise, the value of restraint. It was difficult, like trying to explain color to someone who'd only ever seen in black and white. But slowly, Wraith began to understand. And as he understood, he shared with his clan leaders who shared with other clans. The idea spread like ripples in water. Maybe strength wasn't just about individual power. Maybe mercy wasn't weakness. Maybe there was another way. 6 months after the fight, the rusty comet looked completely different. The broken furniture had been repaired but left partially damaged as decoration. The gouges Wraith's claws had left in the wall were preserved behind protective glass. A plaque hung near the door. Where the galaxy changed, historic site of the Reeves Wraith encounter. Lyra had tripled her prices and still had to turn customers away. Danny sat at his usual spot at the bar, though now it was marked with a small brass plate that read reserved. He'd stopped trying to be anonymous. That ship had sailed the moment the fight recordings went viral. Instead, he'd reluctantly accepted his new role as an unofficial ambassador for human-alien relations. Another request, Captain Hollis said, sliding a datapad across the bar. Kurathi Defense Academy wants you to teach a seminar on human combat tactics. I don't know combat tactics. I know bar fighting. That's what they want to learn. Apparently the Kurathi military brass watched your fight about 100 times and realized their entire combat doctrine is flawed. They're ambush predators like the Vracs, fast strikes, overwhelming force, but they keep losing to insurgent groups who use endurance tactics. Danny took a drink of his water. He'd stopped drinking alcohol after realizing he needed to keep his wits about him at all times. What did I tell them? I told them you'd think about it. Just like you thought about the last dozen offers. Still thinking. Hollis sighed. You can't hide from this forever, Danny. You started something. People want to learn from you. I'm not qualified to teach anyone anything. The galaxy disagrees. The door opened and Wraith entered. The bar's noise level dropped, but not like before. Now it was anticipation, not fear. The Vracs had become a regular fixture, and people had gotten used to seeing him and Danny together. His injured knee had healed mostly, though he still had a slight limp. The arm worked again after extensive physical therapy. Danny, Wraith greeted, settling onto a reinforced stool designed for heavy species. Hollis, Wraith, how'd the meeting go? Clan Council accepts new protocols. Warriors will now train in groups instead of individually. Cooperation over competition. Many resist change, but after 6 months of new approach, success rates improve 30%. Fewer warriors die, more complete missions. Clan leaders pleased. That's good, Danny said. Really good. Is because of you. Because of your teaching. I didn't teach you much. You teach everything, Wraith insisted. Before, I think strength is individual power. Now I understand strength is knowing when to use power and when to hold back. Is harder, requires more discipline, but is better. A young Quillith approached their table nervously. The insectoid barely came up to Danny's chest, its antenna twitching with anxiety. Excuse me, Danny Reeves, yeah? Danny tried to sound friendly. He'd learned that his new fame intimidated a lot of people, especially smaller species. I am Chirik. I study xenobiology at Station University. I write thesis on human physiology and combat effectiveness. Could I ask questions? Danny glanced at Hollis, who shrugged. Sure, I guess. Chirik pulled out a recording device. Humans are classified as deathworld species, but Earth is only gravity 0.98. Many deathworlds have higher gravity. What makes humans effective fighters? We're stubborn? Danny offered. No, please, serious answer. I study many species. Vrax are stronger, faster. Chirathi have better reflexes. Keleth have armored hides. Yet you defeated Wraith. Not through superior physical traits. Through something else. Danny thought about it. Endurance, maybe? I can keep going when everything hurts. Humans evolved to outlast prey, not outrun it. We'd chase animals until they collapse from exhaustion. Yes, persistence hunting. Unique among known sapient species, but also something else. Tactical flexibility. You used environment as weapon. Adapted strategy mid-combat. Wraith followed programmed patterns. You improvised. Humans are good at making things up as we go, Danny admitted. Why? What evolutionary pressure creates this? Earth is complicated, Danny said slowly, trying to remember high school biology. We've got every kind of climate. Deserts, jungles, frozen tundra, mountains, oceans. Humans spread across all of it. Had to adapt constantly. Can't use same tactics in jungle that you use in desert. So we got good at figuring things out, solving problems on the fly. Chiric's antenna vibrated excitedly. And your social structure supports this. Humans share knowledge rapidly across population. One human learns something, teaches others, innovation spreads. Not competitive like predator species. Not rigid like hive species. Flexible cooperation. Never thought about it that way. Most species don't analyze their own nature. You just live it. Chiric paused. May I ask personal question? Depends on the question. Why do you show mercy? Is not logical. Wraith was threat. Eliminating threat would be safest option, yet you chose to spare him. Why? Danny looked at Wraith, who watched him with interest. They'd discussed this before, but the Vrac still didn't fully understand either. Because killing should be the last option, not the first one. Danny said, on Earth we learned the hard way that violence just creates more violence. You kill someone, their family wants revenge. So you kill the family, then their clan wants revenge. It never ends. The only way to stop the cycle is to choose to stop. But this requires trust. Trust that enemy will not strike when you are vulnerable. Yeah, Danny agreed. It does, and sometimes that trust gets you killed. But if nobody ever takes that risk, everyone stays enemies forever. Chiric was silent for a moment, processing. This is very human philosophy. Most species cannot understand. Maybe that's our role in the galaxy, Danny said. Being the ones who try to understand, who try to bridge gaps. After Chiric left, satisfied with the interview, Lyra brought over 2 drinks. Water for Danny, a Vrax mineral blend for Wraith. She'd started keeping it in stock specifically for him. Getting comfortable in your new role? She asked Danny. Still feels weird. I'm just a cargo hauler who got in a fight. You're a symbol, Lyra corrected, whether you like it or not. The human who changed the Vrax, the fighter who chose peace. I didn't choose peace. I just didn't want to kill anyone. Same thing, different words. The bar door opened again, and this time Danny recognized the new arrivals. 3 humans in Earth Federation uniforms. Military by the look of them. Danny's stomach sank. The lead officer approached with practiced military bearing. Daniel Reeves? That's me. Colonel Sarah Webb, Earth Federation Military Intelligence. This is Lieutenant Park and Sergeant Rodriguez. We need to speak with you about a sensitive matter. I'm not enlisting, Danny said immediately. We're not recruiting. This is about the geopolitical situation your actions have created. She glanced at Wraith. Perhaps somewhere private? Anything you say to me you can say in front of Wraith and Captain Hollis. They're my friends. Webb's expression tightened, but she nodded. Very well. Your fight with Wraith the Unbroken has fundamentally altered how other species view humanity. Before we were seen as mid-tier, capable but not threatening. Now several galactic powers are reassessing Earth's danger level. I beat one guy in a bar fight. That's not exactly a military threat. You beat the most feared warrior of the most feared warrior race, easily according to the recordings, and you did it with no weapons, no armor, no preparation. Just raw human capability. That's terrifying to species who've based their entire power structure on physical dominance. So what do you want from me? Your cooperation. The Earth Federation wants to establish a training program, teaching other humans your fighting techniques, your tactical approach. If one untrained cargo hauler can defeat a Vrax champion, imagine what trained soldiers could do. No, Danny said flatly. Excuse me? I said no. You want to militarize what happened here, turn it into a weapon. That's exactly the opposite of what I'm trying to teach. Wraith spoke up. Human Danny is correct. Vrax made same mistake for 1,000 cycles. We focus only on fighting, on being strongest. It makes us weak in different ways. Earth Federation should not repeat our errors. Webb ignored him, keeping her focus on Danny. Mr. Reeves, you don't understand the position you've put Earth in. Right now, we're in a delicate balance. Some species want to ally with us because they see us as powerful protectors. Others want to attack us before we become a threat. Your actions have made humanity a major galactic player whether we're ready or not. That's not my fault. No, but it's your responsibility. You opened this door. Now you need to help us navigate what's on the other side. Danny felt the weight of it settling on his shoulders. He'd just wanted to finish his drink in peace. Now he was somehow responsible for Earth's diplomatic future. The unfairness of it made him angry. I'll help, he said slowly, but not the way you want. I'm not training soldiers. I'm not creating warriors. If you want my cooperation, we do this my way. Which is? I teach what Wraith and I have learned. Not just fighting, but when not to fight. Cooperation, de-escalation, understanding other species. If humanity's going to be a major player in galactic politics, we should be the ones who bring people together, not the ones who tear them apart. Webb considered this. The Federation brass won't like it. Then they can handle their own diplomatic crisis. I will support Danny's approach, Wraith added. Vrax's clan council will also support. We have seen results of cooperation. His better path. Webb exchanged glances with her subordinates. Finally, she nodded. I'll take your proposal to the brass. No promises, but I'll advocate for it. What you're suggesting could actually be more valuable than combat training. After the military officers left, Danny slumped on his stool. This is getting out of control. You punch above your weight, Lyra observed. Literally and metaphorically. I just want things to be simple again. Things never simple, Wraith said. But complicated is not bad. Before, my life was simple. Fight, kill, repeat. Was empty. Now is complicated. Must think, must learn, must cooperate. But is meaningful. You give me this gift. Some gift. I broke your arm. You break my certainty. Arm heals. Mine does not go back to before. This is good thing. 2 years after the fight that changed everything, Danny stood in front of a classroom on Crossroads Haven's education level. 30 beings from 20 different species sat in seats designed to accommodate various body types. A Vrax warrior sat next to a Quillith scholar. A Tirathi soldier shared notes with a human diplomat. Species that had been enemies for generations were learning together. Conflict resolution isn't about winning, Danny said, walking between the rows. It's about everyone leaving the situation better than they entered it. Sometimes that means fighting. Sometimes that means walking away. The skill is knowing which is which. A young Vrax in the front row raised a clawed hand. But how do you know? In the moment, with adrenaline, how do you choose? Danny thought about that night in the bar, about the choice he'd made with his fist hovering over Wraith's head. You ask yourself, what happens after? If I do this, what comes next? Violence is easy. It's the consequences that are complicated. This seems like weakness, the young Vrax insisted. My father says real warriors don't hesitate. Your father is wrong, Wraith said from where he stood at the back of the room. He'd taken to observing Danny's classes, occasionally adding his perspective. I spent 30 cycles never hesitating. It made me strong but isolated. I had no true allies, only those who feared me. Now I have friends. This is stronger. After class, Danny gathered his materials while students filed out. A few lingered to ask questions. This had become his life now. 3 days a week teaching at the station's new Interspecies Cooperation Institute. 2 days consulting with the Earth Federation on diplomatic protocols. Weekends helping Captain Hollis with cargo runs because he needed to remember where he came from. Wraith approached once the last student left. Good class. You improve at teaching? Still feels weird having people listen to me. Is because you have wisdom worth hearing. Wraith settled into a reinforced chair. I have news. Clan Council approves your proposal. Which proposal? I make like 5 a week now. The joint training exercise. Human and Vrax units working together on rescue operations. Council wants to pilot program on border colonies. Show that former enemies can become effective partners. Danny felt something tighten in his chest. 2 years ago, the idea of humans and Vrax cooperating would have been unthinkable. Now it was becoming policy. Sometimes the weight of what he'd started still surprised him. That's huge, Danny said. Really huge. Is because of your teaching. And your example. Wraith paused. The Council wants you to oversee first mission. Make sure both species follow cooperation protocols. Will you do this? I'm not military. No, is why they trust you. You have no loyalty except to doing right thing. Both sides respect this. Danny thought about it. Part of him wanted to refuse to maintain his simple life. But that life had ended the moment he'd stood up to Wraith. He'd started something bigger than himself, and he had a responsibility to see it through. Yeah, he said finally. I'll do it. The door opened and Lyra stuck her head in. Danny, you have visitors. They're waiting at the bar. Danny exchanged a look with Wraith. Visitors could mean anything these days. Diplomats, journalists, species wanting to learn from him, species wanting to challenge him. It was exhausting. They walked to the rusty comet together. The bar had become a neutral meeting ground for the station, a place where different species could gather without the formal protocols required elsewhere. Lyra had turned her accidental fame into something meaningful, creating a space for understanding. 3 humans waited at the bar. Danny recognized them immediately and stopped in his tracks. His sister Amy, his father Robert, his mother Linda. He hadn't seen them in 5 years, not since he'd left Earth in shame after nearly killing that man in Detroit. Danny, his mother said, standing. She looked older, grayer. Or maybe he just saw her differently now. We came as soon as we could afford passage. What are you doing here? Danny's voice came out harsher than intended. We saw the recordings, his father said. His thick construction worker's hands gripped a glass of water like it might escape. Everyone on Earth has seen them. Our son fighting a Vrax, winning, showing mercy. We needed to see you. After 5 years, now you come. You left, Danny, Amy said quietly. You nearly killed Marcus and then disappeared. We didn't know if you were alive or dead. I sent messages. Twice a year. Brief ones. We got your words, but not you. Danny felt old anger rising. I left because I was turning into him. He gestured at his father. All that rage, all that violence. The Reeves family curse. I came out here to be different, Robert flinched. I know what I was. What I taught you. Using fists instead of words. I thought I was making you strong. You were making me dangerous. Yeah. His father's voice broke. I was, and I'm sorry. I've been trying to be better. Got into therapy after you left. Anger management. Your mother made me, but I kept going because I wanted to. Because I didn't want to be the reason my son ran away. Danny didn't know what to say to that. The father he'd left behind wouldn't have admitted weakness, wouldn't have gone to therapy. But 5 years had passed. People changed. He'd changed. I watched that recording 50 times, his father continued. Watched you fight. You used everything I taught you, all those dirty tricks. But then you stopped. You chose to stop. That's something I never learned. My son taught the galaxy something I couldn't teach myself. Mr. Reeves, Wraith spoke up. Your son saved my life. Not by sparing it, but by showing me there is a different way to live. He is good teacher because he is good person. And you're the Vrax, Robert said, studying Wraith. The one he fought. Yes. We are friends now, partners in teaching cooperation. You gonna hurt my son again? No, I protect Danny now. He protects me. This is partnership. Danny's mother approached, her eyes wet with tears. You've built something amazing here, Danny. We watched interviews, read articles. You're changing how species interact, making the galaxy safer. I'm so proud of you. I just got in a bar fight, Mom. You did more than that. You showed restraint when everyone expected violence. You chose peace when war was easier. That's courage. Real courage. The words hit Danny harder than Wraith's punches had. His whole life he'd been afraid of becoming his father. But maybe his father's violence and his mother's compassion had combined in him to create something new. The ability to fight when necessary, and the wisdom to know when it wasn't. I'm sorry I left like that, Danny said quietly. I should have talked to you, explained. You were scared, Amy said. We all were. Marcus recovered, by the way. He asked me to tell you he understands. He pushed you too far and you snapped. He doesn't blame you. I blame me. Then maybe it's time to forgive yourself, his mother suggested. You've spent 5 years proving you're better than one bad moment. At some point you have to accept that. They talked for hours, catching up on 5 years of missed life. His sister had gotten married. His father had retired from construction and started teaching woodworking to at-risk youth. His mother had published a book about conflict resolution in families. They'd each found their own way to be better. Eventually, Captain Hollis found them. Danny, sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation. Border colony in the Theta sector is requesting help. Raiders hit their supply depot. They're asking specifically for you. Danny looked at his family, then at Wraith, then at Hollis. Why me? Because you've become the symbol of human-alien cooperation. Your presence means other species trust the situation will be handled fairly. You're not military, not political. You're just Danny Reeves who did the right thing in a bar. I need a team, Danny said. Mixed species showing cooperation in action. Wraith, you in? Always. Captain Hollis, can you handle transport? Already warming up the engines. Danny turned to his family. Sorry, this isn't much of a reunion. Actually, his father said, could we come? Not to fight, but to see what you do. To understand who you've become. Danny thought about it. Having his family see his new life felt vulnerable, exposed. But maybe that was the point. Maybe healing required being vulnerable. Yeah, he said. You can come. The mission to the border colony went smoothly. Danny coordinated between human colonists and Vrak security forces, demonstrating the cooperation protocols he'd spent 2 years developing. His family watched from the transport ship as different species worked together, protecting civilians and securing the area without unnecessary violence. That's my son, Robert said to anyone who would listen, pride evident in every word, the kind of pride Danny had never heard from him before. On the flight back to Crossroads Haven, Danny stood on the transport's observation deck watching stars slip past. His mother joined him, standing quietly beside him. You know, she said after a while, when you were born I was terrified. Your father was so angry back then. And I worried you'd inherit it, but you inherited something else too. My stubbornness, my need to fix things. You got the best and worst of both of us. Lucky me, Danny said with a slight smile. You took our flaws and made them strengths. The anger became protective instinct. The stubbornness became determination. You alchemized pain into purpose. She put her hand on his. That's not luck. That's choice. Every day you choose to be better. That's the hardest kind of strength. Back at Crossroads Haven, Danny's family prepared to return to Earth. They'd stay in touch now. Real communication. The distance between them had closed. Come home sometime, Amy said, hugging him. Not to stay. Just to visit. Let people see what you've become. Maybe, Danny said. When things settle down. Will they ever? Probably not. His father shook his hand, then pulled him into a hug. I spent my life fighting. You spent your life learning when not to fight. You're the man I should have been. After they left, Danny returned to the rusty comet. Wraith was already there, along with Lyra and Captain Hollis, his chosen family, formed through shared experience and mutual respect. Your blood family seems good, Wraith observed. They are. Finally. Danny sat at his usual spot, and Lyra automatically poured him water. Took 5 years and half a galaxy between us, but we got there. Sometimes distance provides perspective, Lyra said. You left Earth to escape violence. You found violence anyway, but you also found purpose. I found friends, Danny corrected. Everything else came from that. The bar door opened and a young human walked in. Fresh off a transport by the look of him, eyes wide, taking in the diverse crowd. He approached the bar nervously. Is it true Danny Reeves drinks here? The kid asked Lyra. Depends who's asking, Danny said. The kid turned, recognition lighting his face. You're him. The guy who beat Vrax. I watched the recordings 100 times. I came all the way from Earth to meet you. Danny suppressed a sigh. This happened at least once a week now. What do you want? To learn. To be like you. Strong enough to fight but wise enough not to. That's not something you learn in a day. I know. That's why I'm staying. Applied to the Institute's program. Got accepted, the kid grinned. I'm going to change the galaxy just like you did. Danny looked at Wraith, who made an amused sound. You inspire next generation. Is good legacy. It's exhausting is what it is. But Danny bought the kid a drink because he remembered being young and idealistic. He remembered thinking one person could make a difference. The surprising thing was it had turned out to be true. Not because he was special, but because he'd tried. Because when given the choice between violence and mercy, he'd chosen mercy. And that choice had rippled outward, changing more than he could have imagined. The rusty comet filled with the evening crowd. Humans and Vrax, Quillith and Chirathi, species that had been enemies now sharing drinks and conversation. The galaxy hadn't become peaceful overnight. There were still conflicts, still misunderstandings. But there were also more people trying to bridge gaps than widen them. Danny Reeves. Cargo hauler turned teacher turned symbol, sat at his bar and watched it happen. 2 years ago, he just wanted to finish his drink in peace. Now he understood that peace wasn't something you found. It was something you built. One choice at a time, one conversation at a time, one moment of mercy at a time. His hand still hurt sometimes. Phantom pain from broken knuckles long healed. He'd carry scars from that fight for the rest of his life, but he'd also carry the knowledge that he'd chosen correctly. That moment when his fist had hovered over Wraith's head, when everything could have gone differently, he'd made the right choice. Sometimes the strongest thing you could do was walk away, but sometimes the strongest thing was staying, teaching, helping others learn what you'd learned through pain and blood. Danny had found his purpose in a bar fight of all places. Now he lived it every day. Another water? Lyra asked. Yeah, Danny said. And whatever Wraith's having. We're celebrating. Celebrating what? Danny looked around the bar, at the impossible gathering of species, at the friendships forming across ancient divides. Progress, he said. Slow, painful, sometimes violent progress. But progress, Wraith raised his glass. To progress, and to the human who taught the galaxy's apex predator that there is strength in mercy. To mercy, the bar echoed. Dozens of voices in dozens of languages, united in one idea. Danny smiled and drank. He'd come to space to escape his past and instead had built a future. Not just for himself, but for everyone willing to learn. The galaxy's top predator had been defeated in a bar fight. But what had really been defeated was the idea that strength and violence were the same thing. In the end, that mattered more than any punch he'd ever thrown.